Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another fantastic edition of Sitback with Shaq and Anu. It's a Tuesday evening, and we are back at 10 p.m. live on our PodHub platforms, and of course, live on Channel 1 on Dialogue TV. Good evening, Anu.
Good evening, Shaq, and good evening, everyone. These are good days, despite the shortages of everything. There is certainly, a little hope in the air, as we say. And I think a lot of people are smiling at how the tables have turned. But, it is what it is. You reap what you sow. We'll get into that eventually. But boy, do we have a show for you today, because someone else who was at the receiving end when the tables were on the other side.
Yeah, that's right. In terms of hope, I don't know which country you're living in, but I don't know which part of this country you're living in. But one thing though, Anu, I'm telling you, in terms of, just before we get in with our guests, in terms of the number of people who are flocking to go ahead and see the presidential palace, it's just been absolutely astonishing. My theory is, if you can actually walk to the presidential palace, you can certainly walk to work. You've had no excuses.
Absolutely, because I don't think anybody's really taking a bus over there. So there's a lot of walking involved. And, and I've been taking buses in the morning and, coming back in the afternoon, or, to go anywhere. Either I'm walking, busing it, or bicycling it, And so, you know what I mean? For me, everything's doable. Of course, having said that, we should not accept this as the status quo, because, these problems are not of our making, at least not directly so. So, you know what I mean? As much as possible, while I bless the government for, making us a healthier nation, because all of us are walking heavily more than ever before. People who've never walked in their lives, not more than a few meters, are now doing kilometers. So,
I know. I know.
Yeah.
And imagine the carbon footprint that we don't have anymore.
I tell you, right? So I see a big plus point in this. But having said that, let's get back to some sense of normalcy as soon as we can. But like I said, Shaq, when I say hope, is that it's the possibility of good things that can happen, because somehow some kind of weight has been lifted.
Yeah, there is a lot of hope as to exactly what is going to happen. That's the type of hope that I think is people are hoping something is going to happen. But without any further ado, I think it's, of course, time for us to introduce our fantastic guest on the show for this evening. Good evening to Hejaaz Hizbulla, attorney at law, on the show. Hi, Hejaaz. How are you?
Hi, Hejaaz.
Hi, Shaq. How are you? Hi, Anu. How are you? Nice to be here. Yes.
It certainly has, but it's wonderful to actually have you on the show. Hejaaz, lots to talk about. Big day tomorrow, supposedly. We're going to get into that one also. But before we actually get into the conversation, as always, we start the show with a daily poll. And as always, the poll is always related to the topic that we're going to be discussing, or the guests that we obviously have on the show. But today, it's going to be pretty much the topic that we're going to discuss. Anu, take it away. It's all yours.
All right. Before I actually ask the question for the poll, I just have to say I love those lights behind you. This looked absolutely fantastic. Clearly, you were the mastermind. You set this up, didn't you? All right. Without further ado, I knew it. It had to be your vision, Hejaaz. I knew it.
I want to do this in my office, but my wife said it's sit back, so you need to be more relaxed. So you need to get in another location.
I tell you, it works. It works. Okay, without further ado, here is the poll. The question for the poll today. It's always a yes or no answer. So here we are. Upon the impending resignation of the president, should the prime minister also resign? Please text in your answers to our WhatsApp hotline 077 669 1590. Yes or no only. Okay. upon the impending resignation of the president, which is supposed to be tomorrow, should the prime minister also resign? Yes or no answers only. WhatsApp your answers to our hotline 077 669 1590. At the end of the show, we'll let you know exactly how the response stands.
All right, as always, we're going to kickstart the conversation with Hejaaz, and of course, talking about the Constitution. This is something that is very unprecedented for Sri Lanka. A request for the president to step down and also the prime minister to step down. Now, the president has indicated that he will step down tomorrow, and was obviously want to wait for that announcement to officially make its way. But there is also a request for the prime minister to step down. In the event something like that happens, how do we move forward, Hejaaz? What's the plan? According to the constitution, what happens?
Right. Firstly, there is a specific article that operates under these circumstances. So as soon as the president resigns, by law, two things happen. One is there is a caretaker president appointed, and who is the prime minister, failing which it will be the speaker. And also, second thing is that parliament gets summoned on a date fixed by the Secretary General, that is within 3 days of the vacancy. So if so, we already know. I think I saw a press publication that Parliament will meet on the 15th. So that's within 3 days of the 13th, right? As soon as they meet, the Secretary General will announce to Parliament that the President has vacated his office and there is a vacancy, and thereafter call for nominations. Nominations will be, and there'll be a date fixed for nominations. That has to be after 48 hours, but before 7 days. So I think the date already is fixed for the 19th or the
20th.
17th or 19th. 19th, I think 19th, yeah, 19th.
Okay.
And on the date for nominations, Parliament will sit again, and then members will get up and they will say, I propose so and so, and then and I second that nomination. So the proposing, seconding, like any other office election, there'll be proposers and seconders. Of course, you will have to have written approval or consent from the person you're attempting to get nominate.
Right.
So if there is no candidate, then you will sorry, if there is only one candidate, you will have that person will be elected the president. If you have more than one candidate, then a date for an election will be fixed, and that has to be within 48 hours. So again, I think a decision has already been made to have the election on July 20th. Parliament will meet again on the day of the election. Secretary General will function as the returning officer. He will have ballot papers. Each member's name will be called. They will come before him. He'll initial the ballot papers, give it to them. It's a secret ballot. So like any normal election that we will go and they will put in the preferences. Here again, like any presidential election, it will be where you will be able to indicate preferences. You will say, this is my first preference, second preference, etc. You
Right.
cast your vote, and then it's counted, and then you have your president elected. Right? That's how it's going to be. There are issues as to how long he functions, etc. Who is eligible, all that. I think we can talk about it also.
So I just want to know now, does it has to be a member of parliament, is it?
Yes, it has to be a member of parliament, and at this point in time, all members of parliament are eligible except for one, and that's Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, and that's because he has already served 2 terms as president. Anu, am I guessing that you're asking this question in terms of sort of the public demands that outside
Absolutely.
candidates be brought in. Right.
Because
So,
for instance, yeah, for instance, this president or many other presidents before have not been members of parliament. You know what I mean? Now, for instance, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, did he not contest the presidential election straight up, and he never went into parliament, right?
That's
that's
right.
right.
So, I mean, what's stopping prominent public personalities or being nominated into this position?
Right. So there is one important thing here, and that is that we are not electing a president like a normal election.
Right.
Here we are faced with a situation where there was a presidential election, a president was elected for a 5-year term, midway he's resigned.
Right.
We had that before when Mr. Premadasa, President Premadasa was assassinated. Again, 5-year term, he couldn't complete the 5-year term because he was assassinated. Here we have a president, 5-year term, he's not completing it because he's resigning. So rather than holding another presidential election, what we are doing is we are electing a sort of an interim president who will hold the office for the remainder of that term. So the president who's elected on the 20th, if at all, will be a person who will hold office only for another 2.5 years until until October 2024, because before November we'll have to have the election. So the most he'll be there is about October, about 2 years. Yeah, 2 years, just a little bit over 2 years. So
So it
just to
just
answer your question, Anu,
no, go on.
yeah,
Go on.
yeah, just to answer your question, somebody from outside can come in, but that would mean uh, somebody in the national list resigning, opening the door for a nomination, and that person coming and becoming a member of parliament and getting elected. Now, that process also, there are constitutional lawyers who are saying that process is not entirely constitutional, entirely legal, but for now, it remains legal. Because I think with Mr. Damika Pereira's appointment on the national list, it was challenged and the Supreme Court did not grant leave to proceed. So, as far as the law stands as it is now, such an option is open. So I heard lots of names being thrown around. I mean, if there is a real need, I think somebody can come in. Yeah.
Just
Just
now,
well, my sorry. Go on, Shaq.
yeah, no, I just want to find out. Just now, hypothetically speaking, if the president resigns tomorrow and the prime minister also resigns, does that mean the prime minister, the cabinet, and all the secretaries obviously cease to exist till the 20th when a new government obviously elected? That means for 7 days we have nobody running this country?
That's not correct, Shaq. What will
Okay.
happen is, so on the 13th we'll have the president. I'm hypothetical. Let's assume the president
Yeah.
resigns and the prime minister
Yeah.
also resigns.
Right.
15th parliament will gather.
Right.
Right. 15th parliament will gather, and the secretary general will announce to parliament that the president has resigned and the prime minister has resigned. First thing that will happen under the constitution is the speaker will become president.
Right.
Right. And the first thing that the speaker will do is appoint a prime minister.
Prime minister.
Or
Okay.
at least that's what he ought to do. You hope he'll do that, but that's what he ought to do.
Right. Right.
And he will appoint a cabinet of ministers also.
Right.
Right. And they will remain in control until the 20th of July, when the new president is elected. He will
Right.
assume
Right.
office.
Okay.
He has one
Right.
month. He has a time period of a month for him to consult his Janak or whoever he wants, and assume office,
His
right?
version
Right.
of
So he
Yanga.
will assume office. Hopefully we won't have that, but I'm just, I mean, on a lighter way, right?
Yeah.
Right. Right.
and 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 so he will assume office, and then the first thing he will do is appoint a prime minister and
Correct.
a cabinet. So the chain will go like that. Of
Right.
course,
Right.
if the president resigns on the 2013th, 14th, and the 15th, we won't have a prime minister or a president. But no, we will have a president. Sorry, the speaker automatically, as I said earlier, as soon as the president
Right.
resigns, the speaker
Right.
automatically becomes president. But we won't have a
Right.
cabinet and we won't have a prime minister.
Right.
So
But we will have a
I just
president.
want, yeah, I just want to know. It seems like an awful lot of paperwork for a few days. You know what I mean? Because and we are short of paper, mind you. So it just there is a whole rigmarole happening. Because of all these processes. Of course, this is because we have basically implemented our constitution following the British example. Mainly. I mean, of course, there are elements of India and the US in there. But I've always wondered. The Constitution has taken great pains to keep the judiciary, the executive, and the Parliament separate. But ultimately, it just boils down to parliamentary procedure. So it's a bit of a catch-22. In trying to separate these three elements.
Well, we do keep these three entities separate for a reason, right? And
Yeah,
that's called the principle of separation of powers. When the kings were ruling, all three arms were in one person. He was the law; he administered the law, and he was the judge. He was the police, and he was the guy who made the laws. And that obviously led to a lot of authoritarianism and dictatorship and all of that. So obviously we keep the three arms separated, but I think Anu, here we are talking about, because here we are having a question about uh, democratic legitimacy,
correct.
uh, and the right to govern in a democracy, a right to hold office in a democracy, and that is something uh, that Parliament is the one that needs to sort it out, fix it
Yeah, fair enough.
through the representatives, and I think that's something where the judiciary cannot really get involved.
Correct. As the policy
Yeah.
making
It
body,
is.
it makes perfect sense, for them to do that. But Shaq, just bear with me. I just want to
Yeah,
follow
sure,
through
sure,
with
sure. No worries.
because given the fact that I hate to say this because it's just my opinion, but it is a fact. Given the fact that come next general election, most of the parliament might not be elected back. You wonder what kind of right they have to kind of dictate these terms to a people who have just gone through an Aragale to overthrow exactly this kind of corruption. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's an important point that you're making, Anu, because we are coming into this situation on the basis of a public revolt, a popular revolt, and we had a situation like that in 2015. There was a president, but there was a general election. Sorry, there was a presidential election, and the president, a president was elected. Mr. Maithripala Sirisena was elected, but the parliament was not in his control, or his party was not in control.
Correct.
Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as prime minister because although he did not have the majority in parliament, because we were respecting the mandate of the people, because the people had expressed their voice and concern that we don't like the current setup, we want to change. We start with the president, we are coming in for the parliament as well. So until that happens, still those in parliament should not be there, and they gave it, and they walked off, and a new parliament, new prime minister took over. Same thing happened in 2019. Parliament, the Prime Minister was Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, but the presidential election was won by Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the current president, a new interim Prime Minister. So there was this respecting the public voice took place. Here, I think there has to be some sort of, there has to be some degree of recognition given. Of course, the counter argument is, in both those instances, there was a actual election. People went to, I mean, everybody was consulted and everybody voted, and there was a proper consultation of the people's voice. Here, an election has not happened, but I think still that argument does not hold too much water. I think to great extent, the fact that this is a result of a public revolt, a popular revolt, needs to be taken into consideration in Parliament when they are going about electing their new president.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, we also need to understand this, that we are going to go through one of the toughest periods we're ever going to go through in the next few days. We need to do a few things. We need to do debt restructuring, and we also need to go for economic reform. Some very, very tough decisions need to be made. And the person who's going to be sitting as your president and prime minister in the next 1.5, 2 years has to have a lot of acceptability, right? Not just in parliament, but outside parliament. Because I think we will have a tough times for a lot of people. And then there has to be someone who's ready to talk to the people and have people with him or her making those sacrifices, cycling to work or walking to work or whatever, but ready to do that. So all those need to be taken into consideration.
There's actually a question coming up right now, Hejaaz. The question on the screen right now: the president and the prime minister appointed on the 20th, do they have only 30 days or more, according to Hasna?
They have 30 days from the 13th, or they have 30 days
Okay.
from the 13th. But as soon as the president is elected on July 20th, if he chooses to step in on July 21st, then that's it. That's where they have to go home. But they have until August 13th. Parliament has this period. Uh, uh, Parliament has around 10 days to elect a president, and then that elected president has time until August 13th, I think, to take office.
Right. It just there was if you take back when Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, the current prime minister, was handed the prime minister role, so to say, by the president, lots of the opposition was saying that it was not legitimate, right? But according to the constitution, the president can decide who he wants to actually appoint as a prime minister, as long as he or she can show the majority in the parliament. And the current prime minister has shown majority in the parliament by being with the current government. How is it not legitimate in that case? Because they're saying that he is not a legitimate prime minister. We don't want to be a part of an illegitimate government, so to say.
Right. So there is a question of legitimacy and legality. I can be
Okay.
legal, but I may be illegitimate, right?
Oh,
So if you appoint somebody to a position he's not fit for, but all the paperwork is correct, he might be legal, but he's not fit for the job. He's not legitimate. It's
right.
like a captain of a team, right? The coach, if it's the rule is that the coach decides the captain, and he appoints a guy who has not had any proper training or who's not fit enough to lead the team, he may be legally a captain, but what's the legitimacy? And that's the same question with regard to Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe's appointment as well. Did not win his seat, did not get elected, is not the leader of the majority of a political party that has the majority in parliament. Came on a national list and then gets appointed as prime minister simply because the president wants him there, and the president is able to command the other members of parliament to back his selection. So that's one of the biggest problems we've had in our constitution all the time. It's always a question of legality and hardly a question of legitimacy. Nobody wants to do the
Right.
right thing. And this is where we also might look at some examples from the UK constitutional experience, where the UK constitutional experience people the people insist and harp a lot on legitimacy, and that's why people like
Right.
David Cameron resign, Theresa May resign, Boris Johnson resign, because they realize people are not with us, we are not legitimate anymore, although we have majorities in parliament. David Cameron
Right.
had a majority in parliament when he resigned. Theresa May had a majority, her party had a majority in parliament, but she resigned. Why? Because people seem to have rejected her. So
Right.
that's the question of legitimacy and legality. There's a difference there, and that's the point here.
Yes, yeah. But I do have an opinion on both David Cameron and Theresa May, because Brexit was in the picture and they were very very much for it, and there were elections going up and down. Whereas Boris Johnson may have partied his way out of the parliament, because he partied in parliament and it was outside the parliament near the gate of the parliament. Now he's partying at home. So he's an old school network boy. You know what I mean? What do you expect?
Yeah. The point I'm making, point I'm making, Anu, is this:
Yeah,
technically, David Cameron lost lost the Brexit referendum,
correct.
but he didn't lose his majority in parliament,
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
right? If it was Sri Lanka, they would have said, "Yeah, it's true. People have rejected me, but I'm still my majority is
Yeah.
there. I can still command it. So I continue as prime minister. I don't care. People have voted against me. People have rejected my policies. I don't care. I'm still prime minister." But there the legitimacy question plays a big role, because David Cameron knows that his legacy and his whatever his future as a politician is damaged, and that's something that I think uh, the people, and the voters there play a lot of value to legitimacy, and that's something we also need to start doing, and if we are to really progress as a country, and I
Absolutely.
think that we are getting there at least.
Actually, we have all of these questions because this is the first time that this is happening in this country, because
Yeah.
where actually sitting president is resigning or is being forced to resign, because finally people have found their voice, something we haven't done in centuries. So finally it's happening, which leads us to this question by Amana, who asks, in case the president doesn't step down tomorrow, what can be done constitution?
Now, what Amana doesn't ask us is what can be done for what to get the president out. So I'm sure that's what she's asking, right? So, right. So, okay. So that's a tough. The only option is to impeach him,
Yeah,
and impeachment is a long process, and there are very limited grounds of impeachment.
yeah,
Moral turpitude, intentional violation of the constitution, treason, bribery, inability, etc. And then there's an inquiry process in the Supreme Court as well.
correct.
Two-thirds majority needs to vote. So there are lots of barriers. It has been tried only once, attempted, not tried, attempted only
Yeah,
once, when President Premadasa was there. The famous Lalit Atulat Mudali Gamini Disanayaka saga failed, and anyone familiar with constitutional political history of Sri Lanka will tell you that it's a very tough road, and certainly not the road that we can afford to go
certainly not.
in the current economic situation we are in. Because as I said earlier, we need to start talking to the IMF. We need to come up with some sort of proposal that the international community and the IMF are going to accept. So that's on one side. Then we also need to bring that proposals and market it in Sri Lanka
Yeah.
and get the people to accept it.
Right.
So that's not the time for us. I mean, and in that process, an impeachment will clearly destabilize. I don't know. I feel it's going to be a very, very tough.
Yeah.
Tough. It's going to make things really tough.
Absolutely. I think we should actually add one more clause to the impeachment proceedings. If nobody has seen the president in a few days, if the president can't be found at his usual place of residence, or nobody knows where the Dickens the president has gone, I think all those three clauses should be included.
There
Impeachment
is a
proceedings.
provision, Anu. There is a provision.
Oh my goodness, really?
There, there is a provision. That
It
is
has to be
Article
you to find it.
37.2. It's Article
Okay. Okay.
37.2.
Oh
It
wow.
says
Wow.
if the Chief Justice, in consultation with the Speaker, is of the opinion that the President is temporarily unable to exercise, perform, and
Right.
discharge the powers and duties and functions of his office, and is unable to make an appointment in terms of paragraph 1 of this article, he shall communicate in writing his opinion to the Speaker, and thereupon the Prime Minister shall exercise and discharge.
Wow.
So where the so either the president says, look here, my president's house is occupied, temple trees is occupied, president's secretary is occupied, and I'm not ready to come out of my wherever I am, and I'm going to stay at home and
Yeah.
work from home, right? So
Yeah.
please appoint somebody else. If he doesn't do that, then the Chief Justice can talk to the Speaker and say, look, the President is unable to do his job. We can't find him. Nobody can talk to him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Prime Minister will get appointed. So, Anu, we have it.
So
Okay.
there's actually a letter that was issued today by the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Of course, by the president, of course, signed by the president. And this, of course, is basically talking about the statements that okay, I'm just going to read it. The BSL is deeply concerned of statements attributed to various parties, including those who were part of the protest groups, which appear to undermine the rule of law and the constitutional governance in Sri Lanka. The respect to the rule of law and constitutional governance, of course. Obviously, right now, the reason this has come out is because the Aragalaya, so to say, is not necessarily falling in line with what the constitution is requiring them to do, and by them coming out and making it, vociferous, I don't know, things are a bit, bit murky at the moment, because what they want and what the constitution is allowing them to do are two different things. And if the parliament goes according to the constitution, which it should, the Aragalaya will oppose it.
Yes, that's right. So I saw the letter from the Bar Association, and but I was not able to confirm whether these statements from the Aragalaya were actually from the Aragalaya. But I'm sure, I mean, as if the Bar Association made a statement, I'm sure those statements have actually come out. Frankly, I also would not support making demands that are not within the four corners of the Constitution. We had to resort to a popular revolt because we had come to a bit of a dead end. The country had come to a virtual standstill, and we needed a solution. And the people in office were unable to find solutions. And they were part of the problem. And the right thing to do would have been, on their part, to resign and go home. And so after almost 90 days of this demand being repeatedly being made almost on a daily basis, that was not happening, and things were getting worse, and the first chance, second chance. Now that's a situation where the Constitution does not give us an option that can deliver the results. And there are people coming out on the streets and saying, we are going to force it on the leadership. We are going to force it on the political establishment, is understandable. But right at this point in time, we have a mechanism. Constitution provides for a mechanism for a new leader to be appointed, and I think we need to start respecting that. We need to start respecting that, and allow for that to take effect. And of course, we have also opened up a new culture of people being able to voice themselves, and for being a strong pressure group on the government, and that process needs to continue. And I think, frankly, I would say the Occupy Goldface, the Gota Go Gama process should continue. Their pressure needs to be there. Governments, whoever who comes in there, if he's not doing a good job, Gota Go Gama pressure will increase. If he's doing a good job, the Gota Go Gama will decrease. So that process, I think we need to continue that, but
What I
not to the
find
extent of making specific demands.
correct. But what I find problematic, Ijaz, is the fact that we still, even a lot of people in the Aragalaya, when pressed with the question, will you come forward and put yourself forward as a candidate for the next election? The next legitimate election that we will have in 2.5 or 3 years. Lots of people don't want to do it. They're still looking for answers from someone else without realizing, we have a whole bunch of parliamentarians. I hate to say it, not all of them, but a whole bunch of them who are creatures of habit. And corruption has become a habit with the present, incumbent parliament. And as a result, if you want to really change the system, you need to put fresh ideas, fresh thoughts, fresh people forward. And if not you, or if not us, then who? Because so what we are asking for is still for someone else to kind of follow through, follow these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10 steps to get good governance. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, should more people, more young people, for instance you or me or Shaq, come forward and try to do a better job? If we don't, be sent home. Like you said, the pressure will continue.
Anu, on that
Uh,
note, before you just actually does answer that, on that note, Anu, there has been a request that has been put forward by the Aragalaya requiring X number of seats in the parliament. There has been a request that's actually been put forward. That is also something that we need to ask in terms of, like you said earlier on, making demands by being a popular protest of sorts. How does that work out in a democracy of sorts?
right. So the demand that they have made is that they should be appoint that they should have 20 nationally seats to appoint 20 people. Right. The question is, who picks this 25?
Correct.
Whose 25 is, or whose 20 is this? Right. I'm sure if we had a list, it'll take the three of us some time to agree on 20 people.
Yeah.
Right. So if the three of, I mean, 20 people we are going to trust with this job, I'm sure that just the three of us will take at least 2 to 3 hours of debating before we agree on the 20.
Yeah.
So just imagine a country, and then are we going to say all those who camped in Gota Gogamo or whoever who was there, I mean, they have done a lot, but should
Yeah.
we restrict it there? Is it legitimate for us? Is it fair for us to restrict it there? Because everybody's circumstances are different, and not everybody
Right,
can be engaging on can be a full-time protester. So
right.
and this process of the Aragalaya has its own dimensions. It's multi-dimensional. A lot of people have been party and part of it in different ways. So how are we going to get that? And so those issues are there. So so uh, I don't have an answer, but we should not go down the path of a small group saying we need 20 seats, and we decide who's going to go in that 20. And I think that will be very dangerous. I think we need to
Correct.
still remember that everybody has to have a voice. and that includes people who are not exactly part of it as well.
Just
But that's a
some
really
thought
good
has some thought
go
has
on,
been
Anu. No,
given to them when they ask for 20 seats. They are obviously asking for almost all of the national list seats, which is 21. The constitution makes provision for. So if you're going to anyway put in 21 members who are not elected by the public vote, might as well be us. But of course, I see huge problems with that, because then the whole questions of majority minority once again crop up right there. So who's to say who has the bigger voice? And who's to say I am more eminently qualified than you to hold this job? And is a popular revolt the platform that you are going to propel yourself forward on to get into parliament, because you might not fit a lot of the other requirements that is demanded by parliament. So that is that's just my thinking. Shaq, you were saying something, sorry about
yeah, no, because I think that was actually a point that Hejaaz made earlier on. The Aragalia all along have maintained the fact that there is no one leader. They've always basically been together. Everybody is one. But then it goes back to the point that you made. Who decides this 20? If there is no self-proclaimed leader of sorts, I don't know if there is a leadership council. I don't know what the story is, but that is one of the demands that they've actually made. But we'll see how it goes. I think there was actually a question that came up just a few seconds ago. If you can have the question back up on the screen right now.
yeah.
Anu, it says, go
Yeah,
on,
it's
you
armor.
can read this one.
Yeah, but in the UK, they maintain the proper Westminster system. But here we have executive presidency and strongman politics. How can we go back to that system?
Uh, we can go back to that system, I think, if we go back to the Westminster system that was there before the 1978 Constitution. So until 1978, since independence, we've had the parliamentary system of government. Uh, the Samagi Jana Balavegia has put forward a private members bill. Mr. Ranjit Madhur Bandara has put forward a private members bill where there is a reversal, and we go back to the we go back to the parliamentary system. And I think when we go back to the parliamentary system, and also hopefully also go back to the first past the post
Yeah, the cable
electoral.
system. Yeah,
Yeah, if you go to that, I think to some extent we will reduce the one man show, national level one man show system. The dynastic politics might come to an end. We will have some degree of dynastic politics at the pocket borough level. At the
yeah.
grassroots level, there'll be that one strong man running that little area who will contest and win and all that. But at a national level, it won't be there.
Just the problem was with first past the post was that everyone kept getting two-thirds majorities, because I mean how it works is even if you win by one vote, you get the entirety of the seats in that electoral district. So two-thirds majority in parliament was just commonplace. Even Madam Sirimao Bandaranaike had two-thirds majority. And the thing is, then the temptation to change the constitution and come up again with this whole executive presidency comes into play once again. These just my thoughts. So I think there wasn't there a thinking like that, and when the proportional representation came in after.
Anu, we've had two-thirds only once, in the sense
Okay,
once under that system. And
right,
that was when Sirimao Bandaranaike won the election in 1970.
yeah,
And
but
then we
in
had 5-6
correct
when
under the same system,
JR won.
yeah,
So those were the two instances, right? And JR
yeah,
won, of course, after a very bad economic show by the Sirimao Bandaranaike regime. But until Sirimao Bandaranaike managed to get two-thirds in 1970, for about 20 odd years, from 1948, we've had parliaments were not did not have two-thirds. parliaments did not have two-thirds. Dudley said that Dudley Senanayake never had a two-thirds parliament, and there were instances where minority governments were formed.
Yeah.
Why JR introduced proportional representation was the fact that the belief that the UNP had a strong grassroots presence, and that if there that it will be electorally impossible to vote the UNP out of power. The famous UNP, what do they call that? The block vote, the UNP block vote,
Yeah.
because
96.
the year that the year that Sirimawa got two-thirds, she did not get two-thirds of the vote. She got, I think, a little bit more than the majority of the popular vote.
Yeah.
But because they could not secure majorities in those electorates, the UNP got smashed in when it came to the election as a whole. But the vote they had, so that's what I think JR was trying to remedy by bringing the proportional representative system. And Shaq, I know you want to ask me something, but I want to say something to
No,
Anu.
no, 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 no,
Yeah,
no. I'm just looking at all the tons of questions that are actually coming in right now, which unfortunately we can't put up. So the
right,
producers are basically having. So go on, just tell me.
right. So, or shall we just go with the questions? Shall we quickly answer those questions?
No, no,
Would
no,
that,
no,
Sure.
no. I
So
know you.
there's
I know.
one
I know
thing
you
right
guys are
now.
really, really interested. Go for it.
Yeah. So
so
what
Anu,
about challenging the
it's
president's?
about.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Can
Go
I
ahead. Go
answer this
ahead.
one?
Yeah.
The question that you asked about, we need people to come in and and to take over office, and we need new people to come in, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest problem that new people don't come in is because today becoming a member of parliament is a huge thing that costs a lot of money, and it's almost like it discourages you, and it discourages good people from coming in, and that's why the electoral system needs some change.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. So the question on the screen right now: what about challenging the president's mental competency? Won't that help in ousting him faster? This is Reyes who asks us this question. I
Of
think.
course you can, but will you be successful?
Yeah.
There is, I think, a
That's
constitutional provision for that, but
Yeah.
well, I don't know.
It's a long drawn out process.
Yeah.
Personally, I am in favor of not the nominal president, but actually the Queen, and I don't mean the British Queen at this point. I mean someone who likes to cross-dress at home and is fabulous. just putting it out there. Maybe not, but we can have our own Queen.
lots more questions coming up, Anu. But quick one, just before we get into the next question. Today there was some political parties actually met with the representatives of the Aragalaya. It happened today. By meeting them, does that give them legitimacy? Forget legality. Does that give them legitimacy to be heard by the political parties who are elected into parliament by the public, wanting to sit down and have a chat with the representative of the Aragalaya? Does that give the Aragalaya legitimacy?
Shaq, I think the legitimacy of the Aragale is not based on their meeting with MPs. They
Right.
have their own legitimacy, and that's established. I think nobody is disputing that. They have their own legitimacy, and they have established themselves, and they have the support of everybody. Uh, uh, what I thought was happening today was the elected representatives or the elected groups, and I think there were trade unions and professional bodies also there, or the establishment or the civil society trying to fuse itself and trying to come up with a sort of a common plan, or at least a communication channel or a platform where they can come together. So the informal legitimate group in the form of the Aragalaya, and the formally legitimate groups, or the through the former civil societies, people have got elected, etc., bringing it together and trying to see how they can work together. And I think that's a very positive development. That's a very positive development. And I think those conversations need to continue. And that's why I say the Gota Gogama, the whole process needs to continue. But always within the constitutional framework, and that's as the Bar Association has correctly identified.
Just going back to something you said, Hejaaz, that that it's restrictive to come into representation, in the public arena. But aren't we doing that to ourselves? Are we not? Can we not decide to vote for the person who pastes the most posters or plays the most commercials on TV or radio, or what I mean? I mean, it is entirely up to the people, and I mean, this has been said before many times, that people ultimately end up with the kind of government they deserve, unless especially if it's a democratic process, and people you elect. I strongly see that with what's happened right now, what's led to the Aragale is we have collectively we are complicit in what's happened. So why restrict ourselves to be led by popular media? You can think for yourself, can do your own kind of research, find the right people. If they are coming forward, by all means vote for them. And how many presidential candidates have we had? I don't think anyone even recalls the names of the other candidates.
You're right, Anu. I mean, if everybody had the luxury of doing the research, reading, watching PodHub, going on Twitter, listening, reading op-eds, and and learning what's good, reading Marx and who else that you want to read. If everybody had that luxury, certainly, yeah. But the system does not work that way. It does not work that way. Not everybody has the luxury of sitting and watching and reading and being aware of who is a good candidate and who's not a good candidate, who is speaking sense. We had a situation, Anu, where almost everybody in Sri Lanka believed that somebody can put his hand inside a woman's body and squeeze a fallopian tubes and sterilize her. A lot of people believe that.
Yeah.
So we can't blame them, because people who knew better misled them. So we need some degree of system. I mean, there needs to be some changes to the system.
Agreed.
Okay, we're into the final few minutes of our show, Hejaaz. I mean, as always, it's wonderful talking to you, and there's so much that we're learning along the way. I wish we could actually extend the show a bit longer, but we're into the final 7 minutes. I think there's a very, very good question. I think it's going to come up. Our producers are going to put it up right now, which will be interesting to see if this actually does happen. So I'll wait till the question actually does come up. In the meantime, the votes are also coming in on the show. This is the question. What happens if two MPs actually get equal number of votes? This is what's the rule to select a president according to Atik? Do you flip a coin? What happens then?
What do you think?
I wish we know, because
you draw lots. You draw lots. That's the law. You draw lots.
You draw lots.
You draw lots.
Wow.
It's that.
Okay. Isn't it easier to flip a coin?
Well, he will hold. I don't know. Secretary General has the power to devise a system to draw lots, and then the person who draws the correct lot gets elected.
Wow.
See, I'm telling you, these are stuff that we learn every day. Just one question from me before Anu comes in with his question. Now, in terms of what the Aragale has done, so many achievements in the last 3 months, massive achievements that we thought could never happen has actually happened right now, and thankfully it's happened in our lifetime that we can actually talk about it. But does this set a precedent for the other governments or elected officials coming into play if they do not do, or if they are not appreciated by the common man, so to say. A protest can actually erupt for them to be sent off. Is there a time limit for an elected official or a government to settle in and start working, or it could possibly happen every 2 3 months, and we could have another state like Libya at the moment, which doesn't have a settled government for many years?
Yeah.
Thing is, Shaq, is that it all depends on the person you're going to bring in, right? The person who comes in ought to have the skills and the ability and the charisma to talk, to be honest, to communicate, and also deliver on the ground. And I think if you are going to be, if you are going to do that, right, then certainly you're going to give somebody a chance. And we have that example even in this Aragali as well. As soon as Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe became Prime Minister, there was a drop in the Aragali, in the sense that people were ready to wait and
Right,
give him a chance.
Yeah.
And people are saying, okay, the Aragali is defeated, Aragali is finished, Ranil has destroyed the Aragali. I mean, that was the talk. In
right,
fact, there was a
right,
drop. People, because lot of the middle class and lot of the people in their 40s and their 50s were wanting to give him a chance. Let's see what he does. So
right.
so it all depends on the person. It does certainly set a precedent, and this precedent ought to continue, and I'm strongly supportive of that. I mean, we don't need to get so we should not be so desperate that we are camping 24 hours to get our voices heard, right?
Right.
But this process of people talking and people expressing themselves and having themselves heard ought to continue, right? And if we have, and that sets the standard. I mean the standard has been put up very high for
Yeah.
political leaders now to match up, and that's a good thing. And I'm sure, and I hope that whoever who gets elected on July 20th, if the president resigns, will be able to meet that, because we are really going to, as I said earlier, some very tough times, and tough decision making is required in the next few years.
Correct. Jack,
Right,
let me just
right.
remind you that we have 2 minutes remaining, so we are going to get cut off either way.
So, Ijaz, this is the final question that's actually on screen right now. How soon can Sri Lanka, according to the constitution, hold the next presidential and the parliamentary election, according to Vindika?
Right. Parliamentary election, Parliament can pass a resolution and call for election anytime.
Right.
Or the president can dissolve parliament in 2.5 years. The 2.5 year time period falls next March. So there is talk that the parliament election will be held in March.
Right.
Presidential
Right,
election, the president who's appointed on under Article 40, filling a vacancy, he will have to stay to fill his 5 year term. So he needs the balanced term. So that's 2024. So the next presidential election will be most likely 2024, and the parliamentary election will be in 2023. Of course, what I said about the presidential election in 2024, there are constitutional experts say no, given the circumstances, the constitution can be interpreted otherwise and elections held earlier. But I'm going on strict on the law as I see in the books. It's
Yeah.
2024.
right.
Right.
All righty then. We're in. I mean, I wish we had. I wish. I honestly wish we had more time to basically ask all these questions that have been coming in. But it's been fantastic, Ajaz. Just before we do let you go, I know it's time for us to reveal the answer according to our viewers who are watching us live on Channel One on Dialogue TV, and also live on our social media platforms. Everybody took part in this poll that we actually had at the beginning. There was a
That's
poll.
right.
Anu, go on.
Yeah, so the poll was very simple: yes or no answers only. Upon the impending resignation of the president, should the prime minister also resign? And you were supposed to WhatsApp your answers to our hotline 077 669 1590. And here is the response as it stands. But before I read that out, okay, I'm going to read it out. 98% say that just please go already. Uh,
Yeah.
It is wonderful to know that we have found our voice. And before we do sign off, Hejaaz, I just want to say I am so glad to see you smiling, happy, and well, because I know you have been on the receiving end of a lot of racist nonsense. So, I'm glad you have survived the storm and, come out the stronger for it.
And
Thank you, Anu,
yeah,
and thank you, Shaq. Thank you for all the support. And I'm looking forward to watching your program in the future. And I watched the previous ones. Fantastic. Good job.
thank
Superb.
you. I mean,
Please come on again.
really, really appreciate the fact that we have you on the show. And again, I wish we had more time to actually ask all these questions that have been coming in. But yeah, it's always great to talk to you, Jas. Once again, we're glad that you're
Thank you,
back
Shaq.
with
Thank
us,
you.
smiling again. And have yourself a wonderful
Thank
night.
you.
And hopefully, we'll have you back on the show again very soon.
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you, Anu. Thank
And
you.
we'll see you.
Bye bye.
Right.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Hejaaz Hizbulla on. Absolute treat to talk to him. It's just like a walking legal encyclopedia.
Absolutely is. And I mean, we were in school together, so although he's junior, he's a wonderful chap, has always been. So on that
You just
note,
you just want to add that in, right?
oh, මම
That he's a junior.
මොකක් හරි සාමාන්‍ය මිනිස්සු හැන්ද දාන්නේ මම සවල් දෙකක් දාලා ඇදගෙන නාලා. Anyway, I'm very serious about the Queen statement because I think we should have our own queen and far more fabulous than the British monarch. And I can think of several candidates already.
That's
Head
our
of
cue to
state.
go.
Yeah, okay. On that note, we'll see you. Are we doing this tomorrow, Shaq? We are.
No, what we're doing tomorrow for everybody watching, of course, is today. Basically, it's been 15 shows, Anu. It's been 15 shows that we've done, and it's
Yeah,
been
you don't
so
feel
many
it.
wonderful guests that we actually had on the show. Tomorrow, we're doing a collage of our 15 shows, and it's going to be on tomorrow. Tomorrow's a Poya Day. We decided that Anu and I will take a break, and we would like to just watch the show for once and take a look at exactly how we performed in the last 15 shows. Anu.
Yeah. But of course, I'm going to just say that I'm going to cross my fingers, cross my toes, cross my legs, cross my eyes, and hope for some wonderful news tomorrow.
Yeah. Have yourself a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. We shall speak to you once again on Thursday night at 10 p.m. live right here on Channel 1 Dialogue TV and our podcast platforms. Have yourself a good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.